My name is Conor, and I struggle with all forms of addiction, and I am in the process of recovering. I am going to speak about pride today. Before I do, I'm just going to pray. Dear Lord, I just want to thank you for bringing us all here today. I just ask you to be with me as I share on pride. Help me to set aside my pride. And just speak your words through me. In Jesus' name I pray. Again, thank you for being here. I am going to speak on pride. One of the forms of pride that I do have is that I'm nervous. I am worried about what I'm going to say. I struggle with caring a lot what other people think. I may not be alone in that, but sometimes I think that I am alone in that. They say with what I'm working on, they say, God is everything or God is nothing. But ultimately what I'm struggling with is I am everything or I am nothing. It's either I win or I lose. And like I said, I just really care what other people think. When Vicky asked me to do this, and she said, "Can you think of a topic?" And I'm like, "No, can you give me an idea?" She's like, "Pride." I'm like, "Oh, am I really that prideful that you can think of that quickly, that that much about me?" Or, and just so many different things go through my mind. But, at the same time, when she said, that this would be recorded, that scares me as well. I want to be remembered, but at the same time, I don't want to be remembered about what I'm going to share on or what I'm going through. So at the same time, I am just celebrated 2 months clean and sober from drugs and alcohol. That being said, I know that I still have a lot of work to do, that I am still very, sick, not necessarily physically. I've always been gifted by God in the physical, what I look like, or, I haven't broke any bones or anything like that. And people, often say to me, "Conor, you're a good looking guy." That's what I've prided myself on. That's where I've gotten my love and my affection has been through, the way that I look and sports. And so I've kept that with me. So me being 2 months sober today, it's not, I've been up and down. I have gotten months of sobriety. I've gotten, coming in this time before this time around, I had 3.5 years of clean and sober and working at a treatment center as, helping others. And, I did fall, and they say, pride comes before the fall. And, I have fell many times. And what I'm starting to realize is that I am full of pride. What I'm going to share on, like I said, I'm struggling with pride, so I don't really have the solution to it right now. What I'm doing is seeking God to try to fix that. Sometimes, I can't see it. Other people can see it. And I know that through some of the work that I've done, it's easier for other people from the outside looking in to see the problems, right? And I don't like to accept them. I like to say, sometimes I think I know what the problem is with me, and I can easily tell it to myself. But one of the biggest problems that I struggle with is when others tell it to me. I can say what's wrong with me, but as soon as somebody tells me what the problem is, I don't like that. And my guard goes up, my pride comes up, and it's like, who are you to say that to me? But ultimately, I know what they're saying is true, but I can't accept it. And I'm like a child, and I get upset. And, these are the realizations that I'm coming to this time around. I do have to redo the steps, and that's why I say, being 2 months sober, I'm not cured. And I know that I have a lot of work to do. And I like to say to myself before I started to share today that I'm not qualified to share. I don't have all the answers. So like I said, I'm just going to share on some of I feel the pride that I struggle with today, that I'm working on. And so hopefully, maybe it can resonate with you and you can see maybe, oh, I struggle with the same thing. Anyways, growing up, it's always been about, like I said, I've played sports my whole life. And I'm coming to realize that in everything I do, it's wins and losses, right? Even before I start this, after I'm done this, I'm going to look back. My thinking goes right away to how well did I do? Did I win or did I lose? And it's like I said, I am everything or I am nothing. In the I am doing the LifeLab right now, and we're on forms of pride. So I'm just going to read off some of those things that are there: resentment or self-pity, criticism, intolerance and bigotry, difficulty submitting to God's will, courting temptation, worry and despondency, boasting, lack of contrition, lack of serenity, slips through spiritual pride. So when I look at that for myself, self-pity is the biggest one for me. And I don't like to accept it. I didn't even know self-pity was a form of pride. I don't know what I don't know, right? And self-pity, even when I look at self-pity, I start to feel self-pity because I'm self-pitying. It says, pride causes resentments. Resentments turn into self-pity and suicide, either by the hand or by the bottle. And for me, I realized today, me drinking and using drugs the way that I did was a form of trying to die. I didn't want to die, but I didn't want to live. And I didn't want to live inside of this head as much as I was. And that's where I lived my life, my whole life. That's where I've lived my life, was up here. Just caring what other people think. Like I said, wins and losses, being fearful of everything. One of the biggest ones that I am fearful of, is fear of success. And I find the fear of success for me is what comes along with success is responsibility. And I have had no responsibility in my life. That being said, I'm almost 40 years old, so I don't blame anybody or anything for where I've gotten myself today at almost 40. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I grew up in a way where I did not have direction, right? My parents divorced when I was 12. And when my parents divorced when I was 12, I learned how to live on my own and build up the walls, build up the pride of, okay, this is how I live. So I was able to do that and get through that through my adolescent years and stuff. But now that I'm an adult, the way that I was living that got me through does not work anymore. And it's frustrating to admit that I'm still a child in my emotional state. I want everybody to like me, and if I don't get necessarily what I want or a reaction that I want, I get upset and I reclude, and it sucks. One of the things of self-pity is if you had my life, at the end of the day, a lot of people would gladly trade places with my life, right? There are people in this world that, bombs are going off beside them and their family is dying. And I look at it and I'm like, what's wrong with me? Like, I'm sitting here like, oh, poor me. I sucked at volleyball yesterday, and I always just keep putting myself down, and at the end of the day, like that's a form of pride. So I live my life black and white. It's either, like I said, I'm everything or I am nothing in everything that I do. And I'm trying to find a balance in that. So it's either I'm super cocky or I'm self-pitying. So how do I find the middle? Right. And what I'm realizing is the only way that I can find that middle is with God. Right. Everything, the way that I grew up, I have a hard time trusting people. Right. And I can get myself very close to trusting, but as soon, like subconsciously, I'm looking for any sort of reason to not trust you fully, that ultimately you're not for me, you're not trying to help me. And that's based on, from what I see, my past. The biggest people that I feel that have hurt me in my life are the people that are closest to me, right? My mom, my dad, my brother, my sister, right? And at the end of the day, some of the things that they have said to me have stuck with me my whole life, right? And that's why I say, even though they have said those things, I still have to take responsibility for my own actions. I'm almost 40, right? But when my family found out that I was having a child, I have a 12-year-old daughter, and when she was going to be born, I was in the depths of my addiction, and some of the things that they said to me have stuck with me. And like, how can you bring a child into this world with what you're doing? How can you take care of somebody else if you can't take care of yourself? And those words really stuck with me, and it breeded resentment, right? And I just feel so, if I've trained my brain to think this way for so long, it's going to take me some time to stop it or change it. And that's where it's like, okay, God, help me to renew my mind, right? And that's ultimately what I try to pray for. They say not to pray for yourself, but I am realizing that I think about myself a lot, and it's not a way to live. And through going through the 3.5 years of sobriety that I was in before, what kept me sober was helping others, and I realized that there are things, through doing the steps last time, I didn't go deep enough. That's the only thing that I can think of. Why did I relapse? Well, there was obviously some work that I hadn't worked on, right? And I really believe that part is my pride. At the same time, it's easier for me to sit here and say how bad I am than to say how good I am. But my sponsor said to me, I'm an egomaniac with an inferiority complex, right? I've built up these walls. So if God wants to change my mind, it's scary to me for God to change my mind, because I'm so fearful of the things that he's going to take from me, right? That he's going to take away my blankie or my, the things that have protected me that no longer protect me anymore. But it's just so hard to let those things go. And one of the biggest things that I've struggled with is being told what to do. My whole life, as soon as my parents divorced when I was in grade 8, like I said, I did what I wanted, when I wanted, how I wanted. I had no direction. Nobody had to tell me what to do. And that's great. As a 12-year-old to, 25, I get to do what I want. Nobody tells me what to do. I get to go out and drink. There's hardly any consequences. I don't have a child. I don't have responsibility. And all those things are great. But then once you get older, well, now you have to responsibility. You got to go to work. Well, I don't know how to show up to work every day. My first jobs, any jobs that I had in the first place, I didn't show up to. I lost them all. And so I don't know if I'm speaking on a lot on pride right now, or if this is making any sense, but that's a struggle that I'm going through. What else can I say? Doing step 4, I am redoing the steps, and I'm trying to give my life to God. And I don't know how that looks, but I know how it looks is taking direction from somebody else. And I just have a hard time with the trust issue. So ultimately I have to trust God. And even trusting God is a hard thing. Well, God, I can be resentful at God. I can be resentful at everybody. So, one of the things that also the self-pity is, God can help you, but he can't help me. Working at Jericho, when I work there, I really have a faith that God can help other people. But if you really knew who I was or how selfish and self-centered I am, you wouldn't like me. And I do know that God is in my life today, but sometimes I think God isn't for me, he's against me through the things that I did in my last relapse, right? I'm still holding on to shame and guilt of the things that happened in my last relapse. And I'm working towards doing those things, but I'm full of fear of doing it and having to trust somebody to talk to about all that. But that's ultimately why the steps are in the order that they are. I'm not going to be able to do step 4 to 12 without God's help, right? If it were up to me, I wouldn't do it. It's like against all human nature to want to go back in life and admit all of the things that I've done and say it to somebody, right? In my opinion, that's against all human nature. It's only with God's power can I do that, right? And I'm still making the same mistakes. One of the things that I realized today that I have to realize is that even though I'm not drinking and using drugs, I'm still acting the same. I'm still kind of going down the same path. Like in the last week, I've felt there have been situations in my life where I still feel the same, even though I'm not drinking and using drugs. I'm still paranoid. I'm still full of fear. I'm still care what other people think. And my solution was drugs and alcohol. And now my solution of drugs and alcohol isn't there. I'm like, no, I don't want to go back there. It's like, for me, it's like, if I think my life is bad, just add drugs and just add XYZ, right? Like, it's just going to make it 10 times worse. And at this point, I'm fear is a God-given feeling. So I have a healthy fear today of going back to drugs and alcohol because I'm like, I can still vividly remember what happened 2 months ago, where I was 2 months ago. But the problem is, as we move along, as I've moved along, I forget where I came from, right? And that's where it's like, I need to do the steps. That's what I know is what's wrong with me today, is I'm still full of fear and I need to redo the steps, right? So that's that's what I know that I need to do, right? At the same time, what else can I say? Yeah, I guess at the same time, where I'm at in the steps today, one of the things that I was fearful of while sharing this message or saying this is, at the end, people are going to think, whoa, this guy's like really sick. He like, he belongs in a mental institution, right? Like he's crazy or like whatever. But at the end of the day, the steps tell us that I am insane, that God needs to restore me to sanity. So what does that mean? That I am insane. The things that I was doing while I was drinking and using drugs were totally insane. And even though I'm not drinking and using drugs today, the way that I think is totally insane. So that's admitting that I don't want to admit that because of my pride. I don't want to be like that. But at the end of the day, I gotta admit, it's like I go to a meeting where they show a slide where it's a person looking in the mirror, And what they see is this great person, but really it isn't. And that's why I say, I always work on what I look like on the outside. Uh, and I can admit that I do that, you know what I mean? But at the same time, on the inside, I'm a mess. And that's, I guess working on pride is just admitting that, right? And admitting that I have work to do and I can be a child. I can throw a temper tantrum. I can think that everyone's against me, and that's okay. That's why, before I do this, I pray, God help me just lay aside my pride. At the end of the day, I know what I need to do to stay sober is to help other people. And at this point of where I'm at, that's hard for me to think about because I think about myself a lot. and that's okay. At the same time, I think of, when you're on the plane, they say to put the mask on yourself before you put the mask on anybody else. And so that's kind of the conundrum as well. Like when we're in addiction, it says we're selfish and self-centered, and then when we come into sobriety, they say we got to be selfish and self-centered. But at the same time, we look to God to figure out what that middle ground is. Because at this point, I'm not sure what the middle ground is. It's I am everything or I'm nothing, and I'm seeking God, and through doing the steps to do that. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful to be. My dad said something to me yesterday that you probably have a problem when you're asked to write down 10 things that you're grateful for, and you get to about 1.5 and you can't think of anything else. And I'm like, ooh, that's me. So I'm working on being grateful for where I'm at. One of the things they talk about is not getting, I want what I want and I want it now. I've struggled with that, and I'm struggling with it today. But when we're in addiction, when I'm in addiction and I'm using drugs, I get what I want and I get it like that. I take the drug, I take the drink, I get it like that. So now I've trained my brain that that's the answer. And when I want what I want and I get it with drugs like that, when I come into sobriety, my brain is telling me, okay, well, you want to get sober, well, you're going to get it like that. But that's just not the case. And it's hard to accept and to realize those things, that it's going to take work. It's going to take sacrifice. It's going to take, I didn't know how to do the work. I always just got what I wanted. And, I'm almost 40 and I'm just learning those things. So that's okay. And I know for everybody, if we're all here today, God has a plan for us. And, the rod and the staff will comfort us. It'll comfort me. For me, the rod and the staff, I always think of physical, like he's going to break my leg or something like that. You know what I mean? But what's happening with me is he's breaking down my pride and I'm feeling like crap, but even feeling like crap is God given. And to realize what I like and what I don't like and how I don't want to be, right? And and realizing that I am that way. So it talks about in Romans 7, why do I keep doing what I don't want to do? Well, that's the sin that lives in me, and I just got to accept that I'm not going to be perfect, and for me, it's God who's going to help me with those things. And sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. And, for me, I feel that it's been slow, but that's just my perspective. And like I said, it's easier for people on the outside looking in, people that are on the outside looking at me to see the problems, right? And that's where, God works through people. And sometimes, like I said, I have a hard time trusting people. So I just have to ask God to help me trust people and to stay on that path and not think my thinking, is going to tell me that I'm not, even though I've started on the right path. So when it's not going my way, when I'm not feeling good, then I'm like, well, this isn't right. But I'm realizing that in the pain is and in the suffering in here, that's what I need to be going through. So I'm exactly where I need to be. I think we were all exactly where we need to be, but sometimes that's a hard thing to accept. That being said, what is the solution? I can sit here and talk about the problem. At the end of the day, the only solution that I know and that how I've stayed sober is through God, right? And asking God for the strength, because of my own power, I know what happens, right? And so I just ask God for help. And I don't know what that looks like I know what that looks like for me. I don't know what that looks like for you, but I know that it works. So, and that's one of the things that I struggled with is what other people think about the whole God thing, right? God is who you want it to be. God is my God. I have a relationship with my God. And, if ultimately, it's attraction rather than promotion. If I do what I need to do, then, people will want to follow in my footsteps. And that's why I'm following in the footsteps of the people that came before me and have what I want. So that's ultimately what I look for. But I have a hard time staying on that path. So God help me do that.